You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And we are in the month of July. Today, when you are hearing this, will be the 26th of July, the start of a new financial year. And members of the Julie Parker Practice Success Club membership will know that we're all talking about goals for the coming financial year, how to identify them, what kind of goals, and how we're going to go through and achieve them. A big part of dental practice success is making sure that you're promoting and marketing your services effectively to the people you want to hear about them. And that is why my guest today is of enormous value to practices. And he is Angus Pryor of Dental Marketing Solutions. Welcome, Angus.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone.
I'm really looking forward to our discussion today, Angus, because as you said just prior to us starting to record, how are we going to win in the year 2021, the financial year 2021-22? And the online space, SEO, advertising, promotions online, is a space that is consistently changing all the time. So I'm a huge advocate for, it's not a do-it-yourself kind of process that you can effectively do. Always hire the experts in the field, which certainly is what you are. And so I wonder if we can talk about what's working right now and how practices can achieve their best success for this coming financial year.
Yeah, I wrote an article recently from one of the magazines where I was sort of thinking about this. In fact, Julie, for you and me, the reality is we've got to come up with fresh content all the time, don't we? We're writing articles, and so I think you're a runner too. Is that true?
It's a terrible term. I call myself a wogger because I walk, jog.
There's nothing wrong with that. And so I was running around recently, and often that's when I do my best thinking, assuming I'm not running too fast, and then I'm just gasping for air. And I was sort of thinking about, recently, for whatever reason, I counted up the number of hours consulting that I'd done with the dental practices in Australia, and it's over 10,000 hours. And I was thinking, well, what lessons have I learned? What would I, if I'd started up my own practice? Because, Julie, the truth is we've moved, in about 4 months ago, and my wife said to me, and I'm not a dentist, she said, there's no dentist in our local area. Why don't we set one up? And I was like, no, I don't think that's your best idea, honey. But it sort of got me to thinking, well, so I've spent 10,000 hours plus with Australian dentists, like what actually works and what are the things that I would implement? And as I reflected on this, I've come to the view that there's sort of two threads. The one thread is around human psychology, and this aspect, by and large, never changes. In other words, if you think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our need for, shelter and, food and at a big picture reproduction, that was always slightly amusing for us in high school, Julie. We thought, anyway, but of course you don't need reproduction on an annual basis, but certainly big picture, otherwise the species is gone. Anyway, but I realised that, sort of from a marketing point of view, marketing your dental practice to, people, that their needs at a macro level haven't changed at all. And I think that actually what dentists are in is in the confidence space. I know that you're healthcare professionals, but I did a survey recently, and Julie saw my tiny little Facebook survey. I'm really curious, why do people actually go to the dentist? And I've come to this conclusion that it's really the confidence is ultimately what you're selling. I think if people could get the same outcome by not coming to the dentist, they would. but you're healthcare professionals. But apart from that, it's the space of pain. And not the way that you'd think, because I probably alienated half the viewers with that statement, the listeners. When you think about, I don't think about pain in terms of I go to the dentist because I associate it with pain. I go to the dentist to avoid pain. And I go, and that's what the survey showed, by the way. I asked people, why do you actually go to the dentist? And a bunch of them said things like, because the dentist rings me up and reminds me, or, sends me an email or whatever. But when you dug deeper, the reason they go to the dentist is because they want prevention, essentially. They want to avoid pain. And so I'm sorry that's a long answer, but basically, in my view, from a marketing point of view, we've just those sort of human psychology fundamentals don't change. The thing that changes is the tactics, which is the sort of strategy. You have a kind of a macro strategy, and then you've got the tactics to attract people. And for me, that is a process of matching up what is the kind of macro goal, which is. Now, avoiding pain is not a great message, it's fair to say, but we just got to keep that in the back of our mind. And then sort of what are the individual tactics that are going to get people's attention? And I think people, I think it was Sigmund Freud who said that humans we move towards pleasure and away from pain. And so I think in our marketing, we are, we're... At the one level, people are looking for a dentist because they want to avoid pain. I need to go and get my checkup, or I'm actually in pain. And at another level, it's I want to go and get something better. So those are the sort of guiding principles. I think the thing is, then it becomes an exercise in going where the patients are. Where are they looking for you? And the mistakes that I see is that people are, they're trying to be all things to all people. Whereas I would say, get very clear on your message. On in that against that background of confidence and pain and pleasure and so on, and then find a way to stand out. And oh my goodness, if ever there was a time we needed to do that, that is now. And Julie, in fact, let me do a little survey with you. What are the common / overused ways that dental practices use to try and distinguish themselves from their competitors?
They're common. I'm not quite sure how effective they are, but it's the things that I see that are quite common is that we are a family dental practice.
Yeah.
We are a gentle dental practice. We have top technology. Those sort of themes I see over the years has never really changed. That seems to be a common thread for many practices.
Yeah. And the problem with those is that they fail the. It's not that there's any problem with that per se. It's just that you've got to join the dots for people. When I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a while, and I had a guy I worked with there, and he said, "These are the magic words. This means." And that's how you join something like those things that you just mentioned to what actually matters for the patients. And so I've heard it said that everybody's tuned into their favourite radio station. Perhaps you've heard of this one, WIIFM. What's in it for me? So, we're gentle and we're friendly. And well, what does that mean? Because the problem with those statements is that they're so general. It's very hard for anybody to assess you. Is there an independent friendliness index? We've been assessed by friendliness.com, and we've got a rating of 8.9. It's just meaningless. And same for gentle. Technology is an interesting one, but again, this means, what does it actually mean for you? It means that you've got access to a fuller range of services. Maybe it means that you're going to get better outcomes. Maybe it means that you're going to get faster service, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying this process is easy, but it's absolutely essential so that practices can really stand out from their competitors, because kind of friendly, gentle, experienced is another one I hear, Julie, and I'm like, well, sorry, but you could be practicing the same bad practice over and over for decades.
That's absolutely right. And I think that to effectively market, and I heard this quote on another podcast called Content Sells, and it's a great podcast by Susie Daphnis and Michelle Falzon. And Michelle Falzon said, your market your marketing ideas should never be driven from your brain. They should be driven by your market. And so really stepping into the market, understanding how they think and feel and what they're desiring is crucial. And one of the reasons why I loved your post so much. And one of the things that I found really intriguing about your post, which prompted me to then write an article for Australasian Dental Practice magazine, who you write for also, because I found it so compelling, was, we are driven so much in our lives by our core beliefs, our core values. I mean, that's what does drive all of our behaviours and responses to the world. And quite often in the past, when I was growing up through dental practices, the question used to be, how can we convert non-regular attending dental practices to truly understand the value of maintenance and prevention, what you're talking about, and convert their lifelong habits and make them 6 monthly attenders. And that, I've always thought that that's quite a flawed process, because you're really delving into how people grew up. It's like saying, now go, start following a different religion, just do it different. I think it's really difficult to do that. But one of the respondents to your post said, I used to attend every 6 months religiously. I went to a hygienist. There was a new hygienist in the practice. She shamed me about not flossing on a couple of occasions, and that did it for me. I was done, and I stopped going to maintenance. So it's really intriguing to me how difficult it is to shift somebody from the way they normally function with the dental practice, but it can go both ways. It's not just converting people into becoming more aware of prevention and the importance of it, but we can really damage that relationship if we're not careful. And I suppose when we're talking about how do we distinguish ourselves from other dental practices, understanding how that patient mind ticks and what they actually want to read about your practice that goes, oh, that's different. That's actually really tapping into a fear or a belief or a value of mine. And therefore, that's the place I want to go to.
Yeah. Now, so the rule of thumb, I mean, the website is an obvious place for most people to look. Just by the by, Julie, I'm staggered at the number of dental practices that don't have websites.
Really?
I'm not saying that it's a lot, but it's something that we uncovered through a recent marketing exercise. And I was going, I hope, you are packed to the gills and you've, your loyal group of people can't get in for 6 weeks, because otherwise I don't understand. But anyway, as a rule of thumb, and this is, another challenge that I see, and this one's fairly perennial, which is that your practice website should be about 70% about the patient and 30% about you. And I would say it's probably, if that number's 70-30, patient versus practice, I reckon the usual flow is about 20-80, where I think it's about 20% about the patient, it's 80% about us. And the truth is, again, like that WIIFM, it's not, I don't care what you do, I only care what you do for me. And that process of joining those dots is tricky. And, it sounds like self-interest for you and me to say this, but I just, I guess I'm saying to the listeners, like, play to your strengths. I mean, when I watch people writing copy about themselves, it usually fails because they're speaking from the point of view of what it's like to deliver that service. And you absolutely need to do that. But the problem is, from a patient's point of view, their perspective is completely different. And so when I see, the words written by dental practices where they've done it themselves, it's all about the sort of technical delivery of the service. And like 100%, you need to do that. But that's not what your patient's buying. Today, Julie, I'm doing an exercise with a practice. This is something we do when we start working with people, where we look at their data. That's the first thing. Every single practice in Australia has an ideal client or client group. And so virtually the first thing I do is run a report for expenditure for the last 12 months, sort from the biggest spender to the lowest spender. And we're going to zero in on the common characteristics of your top 30 patients. And I can tell you, speaking of 80-20 rule, my goodness, I've seen, the top 3%, let me just remember the figures. The top 3% of one practice accounted for 40% of their business.
Wow.
Like it's insane. And so you zero in on what are the common characteristics of those people. And And every practice has those people because they voted with their wallets.
What a great way of determining who your ideal patient is, your avatar. You've got them sitting right there. Yep. And I think most practices would be the same. It would be a very small percentage that are contributing the lion's wealth of the income coming into the practice.
100%. Like trying to be all things to all people is just a recipe for disaster. You end up being super bland, Julie, our job here is not to sort of sledge dentists. This podcast would have a very short shelf life if we did. But I do think, I sometimes dealing with practice and like, oh, Angus, like we really like families. Oh, and we like singles. Oh, and we like young professionals, and we like kids. And I'm like, well, just go for a primary market. And, you look at your data, I mean, it is crazy, the difference. To go back to that scenario, and that one was a little bit of an outlier, but I would say for many practices, the top 5%, let's say they've got 1,000 active patients. Their top 50 people, I'll even take it out that far. So 5%. They're usually accounting for 25, 30, 35% of their business. And my question is, if you could duplicate that group, so you've got 1,000 active patients and I want to add an extra 50 into the mix, an exact duplicate of the top 50 that they've got. I know that's a little bit artificial, but let's imagine we could do that. How much extra rent do you need to pay in your practice to service those extra 50? Zero. How much extra, staffing costs? How much extra electricity? Like zero. And yet in the scenario we've described, you're sticking an extra 25, 30% on your business. So, I start with that group. What are the common characteristics of those top 30? Are they more likely to be men? Are they women? What age are they? What suburbs they live in? What's their socioeconomic background? What's their educational background? What's their occupation? I've even had this one I'll never forget. We look at occupations, and just by the by, when I do this with practice, I say, okay, John Smith is first on the list. They spent $15,000, $20,000 with you last year. What does John Smith do for a living? And if they go, oh, I don't actually know, I'm like, hello, like you should know everything about that person. I mean, you want to cultivate that. Anyway, it happened once. So we look at the top 30 and usually you get more of an educational background rather than occupation. It's like I look at that top 30, most of them have got a degree or most of them are high school, most of them are blue collar, most of them are white collar, whatever. And in one particular practice we did this with, and this practice had a very, very strong focus on gentleness, but they described it in a very unique way. And when we look through the occupations of the people who are on that top 30 list, this fascinated me. They had a whole bunch of carers.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, so think about the psychology of that. Here's a practice that has gone to the nth degree about the gentleness. And they didn't just say we're gentle and we're friendly. They describe, I'm not going to say what it was, but they really nailed it. And the very people that were in the same sort of compassionate space were drawn to this practice, like bees to honey. Anyway, so I guess you go through that process, identify who that person is, that avatar, what age are they, where do they live, what's their family composition, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next part of the process is to look through their eyes and sort of metaphorically and say, and give them a name. Is it Mary? Is it Sue Lim? Is it Ashok? Like, what is the ethnically sensible name for that person? Does it make sense? Is it Arthur and they're a 25-year-old? No, probably not Arthur if he's 25. That's a name, no child is, sorry to all the Arthurs listening. Do you know what I mean? Like a name that makes sense. And then you look through the eyes of Arthur and you say, what is it about this practice that Arthur really values? What is about this practice? If Arthur was telling his friends about it, what would Arthur say? What are the fears that Arthur's got, pain and pleasure, that this practice helps him to overcome? And if you look from Arthur's eyes at the practice, what you'll get a whole bunch of text from that. The first time we did that, I was shocked because I thought, there was no mention of dentistry. Oh, that must be an anomaly. Let's do it again. Now, I have done this process dozens and dozens of times. I'm doing another one today. And I guarantee you, when you look through your ideal client's oh, is at your practice they never mention dentistry.
Gosh, that's very interesting, isn't it? And it is coming from that perspective of you are helping patients feel a certain way, whether it's greater peace of mind or what have you, or feeling cared for and nurtured through the process, but tap more into how you're making them feel rather than the actual services that you're offering.
Yeah. And that process, it sounds like it's a bit of effort, but I can tell you when you do that, and basically we do an exercise with the whole team, get everyone to look through the eyes of their ideal client, having first established who they are. And then we get all those words together, we stick it in front of one of our copywriters and they produce a kind of a page or a few paragraphs of text. I've never seen one practice described alike as another. Because when you do that, every practice is slightly different, and they've got this unique thing. And the fact is your geography, where you are, means that your avatar is going to be Arthur or it's going to be Martha or it's going to be Madison or whatever. And then it's not like you've got to go finding some avatar that's not there. It's already there. They already trust you. They've already voted with their wallets at your practice.
Sometimes people don't go down this path because they think, I'm not quite sure what it means. I'm not quite sure how to find that information. It's all going to be guesswork anyway. But you are truly identifying how you've actually already got them.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is, and you can imagine what they would be enjoying about being a patient at your practice. But you could also send them out the simplest of surveys. What do you love about coming here? And what could we possibly do to improve it? We don't need to have a 10-word 10-minute survey. It can be nice and quick and easy. And
I like that idea. And
sending that off just to that top group of spending patients.
Yeah, and I the time to do it is within 24 hours of their first visit.
Nice. And that's really tapping into something too, when their ideal time to access this kind of information is.
Yeah, because if you ask them at their second visit, they've forgotten. But here's what the research shows, Julie. You've got 5 seconds, slightly less for women, slightly more for men, apparently, when they get to whether it's your website or your Google presence or what have you, to answer 3 questions. Who is this for? What's this about? And why should I engage? And the what's this about is basically that it's about dentistry. Sometimes, maybe you're doing pediatric or something a bit different. So you've got to be super clear about that. And it needs to be the sort of thing that people will pick up where they just kind of stare at your website for a few seconds and then switch it off. If you can imagine showing your website to a whole group of people for 3 seconds and then taking it off. What do they remember? I think it was about dentistry. The who is this for question is generally about where you are, because by and large, people don't travel for the dentist unless you're in a country area. We know that from Google Ads, where you can do it by a radius. And we found that unless you're in a sort of regional area, unless you're more than basically people won't travel more than about 5-6 kilometres unless they've got some unusual sort of historic connection. So most practices are okay on those. I must admit I've landed on a few dental websites where I went, like, what the hell is this? What are they selling here? But the third one is the one that I see people missing, and that is, why should I engage? And as I say, the problem is if that 5 seconds is sort of all about us, we're friendly and we're gentle and we've got good technical skills, then they failed to say, but I've just looked at 5 dental practices and you're all the same. Whereas if you've got that text there that says, oh, hey, is this you? Are you Arthur? Or, do you, I don't know, ... that really can make a big difference. So that, I would say those parts are fairly perennial.
Nice. And I think, when I was around, when internet wasn't part of, and certainly computers weren't part of every dental practice, and then going through that process of them slowly getting on board and then people slowly getting websites up and running, I think the perception around a website was it's just like a glorified business card. It's a big business card. But its actual purpose today is wildly different. You want to do everything you can to engage people into a journey or an experience within your website. It's not just that business card.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the software companies, their data tells us that if you allow people to book online, that you're likely to get more business that way. I will say this: it does, in my experience, it does depend a little bit on the area that you're in. There are some areas where you can get lots of people booking in online, but the show-up rate may not be brilliant. It just depends a bit on the socioeconomics, I've found. But I'd say across the board, that generally works pretty well. The other thing that, if you think about it, like what space are people in? Are they kind of what I'll call warm to hot? Are they like, I've got a dental issue, or, I don't know, a friend's tooth has just fallen out. That reminds me, I must get booked in. Then you make it easy for them to book an appointment. But then there's another group of people that arrive at your website that are what you might call warm to cool. And so they're just, I don't know, just happened to see a sign or saw a post on Facebook. I thought I'd just come and check you out. I'm not really ready to book. And the question is, what do you offer those people? And having some kind of, where they can get a free report or something that they can get as a resource that is relevant to them and their needs, that can be a way of kind of encouraging, where you're starting to take people on the journey of know, like, and trust. So that's another possibility.
Very good. I know that when I've spoken to dental teams, and one of my online courses is on this very topic of how do you schedule in new callers into, convert new callers into actual appointment times. That's part of it. It's recognising that not everyone's ready to book in straight away. They're still going through search and intrigue about what tooth whitening is all about, or what an implant is all about. And so whatever you can do to provide a download where you've got their email address, that the next time you've got a whitening special on, for example, you could then target them in some way. But any way that you can help them in that space of search, so when they are ready to eventually book in, they say, oh, hang on, there was one dental practice that provided me with more information than anybody else. They're the only one that actually send an email follow-up to me, or sent me a download or what have you. And I think recognising you can do something in that space and get those patients to eventually, may not be right now, but eventually.
Yeah. Somebody, a guy that I follow called Donald Miller, who's written a number of books, including one called Story Brand. And he says in 2021 that somebody's email address and their first name, you could say, has a notional value of about $20 or $30. In other words, it's like, I ain't giving that to you unless I think I'm getting $20 or $30 value. So if this download is 5 reasons why we're awesome, then I'm sorry, I'm not paying anything for that. But if I think that I'm going to get a tangible benefit where you're going to, and basically it's save money, save time. I'm trying to think. I think when you sort of boil it down, every offer on the planet is one of those headings. I'm sure health or something is in there too. So it's just a matter of, again, who's this ideal client? What are their fears? What are their concerns? How can I speak directly to that? One of the practices we work with, their avatar was a bit older, and this was one of the insights. And by the way, get the whole team to do this. I often find it's not just the dentist. It's often the other staff who just happen to chat to people. They really get these people. And one of the team, I think it was someone working on reception, said, this avatar was Mary. She was a bit older, maybe in her 60s. It's like, she's worried about keeping her teeth for the rest of her life. Her days of employment are sort of coming to an end. She's kind of, the bell curve of income across the, she's over the hump there. She's worried about her teeth being in good shape when she's 80. And so therefore that becomes a thing, 5, I'm just making this up, but 5 simple steps to keep your teeth in great shape until you're 80. Well, if Mary arrives at your website, she goes, yeah, actually, I would be interested to know that, because I think that's got some value. If I can, adopt these 5 simple steps, that's probably going to save me hundreds of dollars. Yes, okay, fair enough. I'll give you my first name and my email address.
Fantastic. I think you're really you're explaining so beautifully that in order for your website to be well designed and delivering something of value to your marketplace, you need to understand that niche part of your market. You really do need to go down that path of identifying who are you talking to at the moment, because it has a ripple effect out. When you're talking about the Marys of the world and you've identified the Marys are going to be making up a majority of our client base, and so we're going to be focusing a lot of our marketing and promotions, services, everything else to the Marys of the world. The Marys of the world also want a particular experience of the practice, and so all of a sudden it's affecting how and what type of systems you're rolling out, how and what type of team members you're employing, and how and what type of customer service, what that looks like to the Marys, because we want to keep appealing to the Marys.
Yeah, if I can speak to one objection, Julie, because I've done this so many times, and I know some people listening to this are going to go, well, good on you, Angus and Julie, you're singing from the same hymn sheet, well done. But what about all those non-Marys? I still want to do business with them. And this is the thing. Just because your messaging and your offering, your services are tailored towards Mary, because you'd be crazy not to. She's outspending those others by 10x. That doesn't mean that non-Marys won't do business with you. I mean, think about yourself as a consumer. Are there any businesses that you deal with that you are not the ideal client for? I mean, I can tell you, big business, they spend millions, in fact, even billions of dollars in market research trying to figure out who are their ideal clients. And if you have a look at something like the car companies, they know that for each model of car, there's a certain, the biggest selling car in Australia is a Hilux, a Toyota Hilux. So it's like a ute, essentially. And yes, they could say, well, everybody should buy a Hilux, whether you're 70 or 20, but all of their marketing shows a kind of 40-something tradie-looking guy, because they know that if they speak to that market, more of those ideal clients will buy them. But Julie, I'm not a 40-something tradie. It doesn't stop me from buying a Hilux.
That's for sure, where you're living now.
Yes, I'm living semi-rural now. A 20-year-old female could buy a Hilux. It doesn't stop them from doing business. I mean, one of my online mentors is a guy called Ty Lopez, who I've met. And he straight out said that his avatar is 20-year-old males. Well, I'm clearly not a 20-year-old male. It doesn't stop me doing business with him. It's just that the better you can identify who your ideal client is, they will do more business with you. And as we've discussed, I mean, go and look at your numbers. Your top people are spending 10x, 20x what the rest are. So it's, I know you're going to think, but Angus, I want to service everyone. Clarifying your ideal client and delivering a service and a message to them does not stop the other people from buying. And if you don't believe me, think about yourself as a consumer. I mean, do you ever go to McDonald's or whatever? Like all of their marketing is just sort of 20-somethings. It doesn't, Coca-Cola, there's all different avatars out there, but it doesn't stop us as consumers dealing with businesses that we're not the ideal client for.
That's for sure. That's absolutely for sure. And it's not like they turn up to the practice and the receptionist says, well, you're not our ideal demographic, so you won't actually gain a great amount of value from us. Of course you will. So it's like the person turning up. There's actually a dentist friend of mine, and she loves the big trucks. She doesn't live rural. She's not a tradie, but she loves buying the big trucks. It's not like all of a sudden the truck stops working because she's not the ideal demographic for that particular product. So I think in business, it's often just the 1% little shift that can make an enormous impact. And this could be one of those 1% shifts that you were talking about in an extreme situation or a rare situation, that 3% of the client base were spending 40% of the turnover. If you just move that 3% up to 4-5%, what is the impact of that by the end of the financial year?
Yeah, I just, and just by the way, like you go through that process, it's not as though you discuss it with the clients. I mean, Julie and I have both got avatars for our business. Am I telling you what my avatar is? Hell no. Like, I don't, you want to make everybody feel special. It's not that. It's just that you just get to know who they are, and when they're on the other end of the phone from you, you go, oh my goodness, this is exactly who we service, and we know that we service them better than others because that just we've already figured that out. For whatever reason, that group resonates with the business that the services that we offer, and so they're already there. So I understand that it's in some ways a little bit counterintuitive. I understand that it does require some courage to do this because you're thinking, Angus, I want to service everyone. And I say, that is just a recipe for disaster. But it does, it's definitely worth it. I just go and look at your numbers. Don't even if you don't believe a word we say, go and look at your numbers and then tell me that everyone's created equal in that regard, because they're just not.
And I think possibly it's part of it as well. We're so fearful of alienating a couple of people that we don't take that step. But it's okay that you alienate a couple of people. I know that I email my list quite regularly, and whenever I come across somebody new and they say, oh, yeah, I get all of your emails, and I would probably email, pretty much now, especially now with the podcast happening, I'm emailing pretty much on a daily basis. And at the very start of my direct email marketing journey many years ago, you'd have opt-outs and you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. I had an opt-out. Focusing on the people that keep reading it. You're focusing on the opt-out and thinking, what am I doing wrong? But then Charles, my husband Charles and co-founder of JPPS, said, no, it's making your existing list richer. And that's what it's about. It's making sure your patient base is richer because they're engaged, they want to come, they love your service, they're forgiving when the minor things happen, like just today we're running half an hour late and it doesn't normally happen. The compressor's giving us trouble today. They're forgiving of all the minor things because you really want to develop a bit of a tribe around you that just love the way you do stuff. And the only way you can do that is to deliver above average service and expectation of what that group want. And it's just too difficult to have that group cover so many different demographics.
Yeah. It's look, I think, as it were, in defense of the listeners, this is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. It does require some courage, but not to be the bearer of bad news, but just if you just look at the macro trends, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but it's the truth. Like, dentistry is just becoming a commodity. If you look at the definition of a commodity, it is one product that is easily substitutable with another. So unless you've bought into do you really care what brand of flour you buy? Do you really care? I don't know whether it's petrol or whatever it is. It's just, unless you can come up with some unique branding, they just go, oh, well, why would I go to Julie's practice when I've got another one that's, I don't know, and the problem is, in the absence of developing that strong brand and that strong play to your avatar, it just becomes the race to the bottom in terms of price. And the macro numbers are not good. I mean, in Australia in the last 5 years, the population's grown about 7%, and the number of dentists has grown about 18%. And that trend, I've been following that trend now for 7 years. That trend is not slowing. That trend is very steady. Every year, the rate of growth of dentists in Australia is about 2.5 times the growth of the population. So you just cannot afford to go, oh, Angus, I pine for the good old days when we could put out our welcome mat and we'd be booked 4 weeks in advance. In most parts of Australia, those days are gone. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I want you to win. And part of that is going, oh, okay, well, maybe we've got to do things slightly differently. So, yeah, this process that we're describing, this is not just some kind of Julie and Angus having an academic, a sort of feel-good session. I mean, there's some fundamental principles behind this that will lead you to having a better business. I mean, I'm not a dentist. I don't have a dentist in my family. People often ask me, why did you even get into the space? Because this is going to sound trite, but I really admire dentists. You guys have got a gift. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that have got a problem and you help them fix that, whether it's that they, that they can sort of, that moving away from pain, the sense of, oh no, I just go regularly and it just makes me feel good, that's one part of my life that's being looked after. For others, it's their genetics are terrible, and you produce this smile that is just skyrocketed their confidence. But you can't share your gift if you present to the market as being the same as everybody else. That's the reality.
Yeah. And I think, when I'm thinking to myself, when you were saying that they have a gift, as a dental nurse receptionist over the years, that's certainly what I was exposed to, just that shift between when the patient first comes in with toothache and then leaves completely relieved and confident that they're going to be having a good night's sleep that night, and the relief on their faces is just so evident. And then again, when they come in and they've had a smile that they haven't been totally happy with for a period of time, and there's so many videos online to show this as well, they go from feeling low confidence and worried about what the result will end up being, and then come to the post-op video of them seeing their smile for the first time and the overwhelming feelings of emotion that they have, and really recognizing that is an enormously powerful space to be in as a dentist. To be able to provide that is quite extraordinary. So really tap into the feelings that those patients feel at the moment, because that actually is why people enter into certain services within your treatment range as well.
Yeah, and at the risk of labouring the avatar message a bit further, one of the things we've discovered is that your dental aspirations differ with the avatars. So if I would say, if I were going to set up a dental practice, I would go for a sort of middle-class suburban area where mum's got teenage kids and mum's in her 40s. Like if I could just sort of lay it out there, that's what I would create. And here's why. If it was middle class, in the lower socioeconomic areas, they may not have the money to spend on dentistry. In the most affluent areas, this is what the dentists tell me, the people can be a bit suspicious because they think that you're overcharging because you're in a rich area. So in the middle class areas, that's just kind of part of the deal. And then it's generally women that spend more money on dentistry than men. With this avatar exercise that I've done, it's almost always a woman. Occasionally, it's a 50-50 split. And the reason that I like the sort of women in their 40s is because if they've got kids and then the kids reach that sort of teenage stage of life, the mum's been about the kids. That's all the focus has been about the kids, and then suddenly they get to this sort of slightly more independent stage, and it's like suddenly the parents are less relevant. I've been through this stage, and so you've got sort of that. You've got the family where they're possibly at the most affluent stage in their life, because generally speaking, people get promoted more as they get older. And the other part is that mum starts looking in the mirror in her 40s and going, oh, I'm not quite as young as I used to look, and that's where it becomes a time where they start to be more about me, and I'm starting to care more about my appearance. And by the way, the older I am, the higher the dental need. So, of course, Australia doesn't work like that. But if you're thinking, well, where am I going to set up a practice? For me, that little avatar there is a sweet, sweet spot, because mum's reasonably cashed up. She's motivated. It's all been about the family. Well, that phase is sort of in the rear vision mirror now. And you go in there and you're a practice that speaks to her, and you help her with her confidence and, feeling younger, etc. That is a sweet, sweet spot.
It's certainly been a common phrase that I've heard over my decades in dental practices, that now it's my turn.
Yeah, exactly.
For a long time now, it's my turn.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what else can dental practices do in 2021 for the remaining part of this year in terms of their marketing online? Yeah.
So the one we haven't spoken about, and I'm going to say it, and some of you are going to go, oh, well done, Angus, cutting edge news there, is Google. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking, Angus, why on earth are you talking about Google? Like, duh. But here's the reality about Google. Even still, Google is growing at 10% a year. Even now, Google was founded, I think, in 1996. This is a business that's 25 years old. It's still growing at 10% a year. The reason why it's so important is because there's data that shows that more than 60% of people are checking Google for dentistry. Secondly, and this is the one that fascinates me, is that I think now with the prevalence of Google reviews and such, that Google is trumping the personal recommendation. Now, I could give you dozens of anecdotes about this, but let's imagine Julie and I work together in an office, and I say, "Wow, Julie, I really love your teeth," et cetera, et cetera. Who do you go to for the dentist? And she says, "Oh, well, it's XYZ Dental." I go, "Oh, that's good. All right. Well, I really like their work," and you say to me, "Oh, they're so friendly, and they know my name, and they really look after the kids or whatever." And I go, "That's great. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Google them." And I can tell you that my wife, basically her best buddy at work, it was a different healthcare professional, asked the same thing. Her friend, who she had no reason not to trust, said, "Oh, I recommend XYZ business." And so she Googled them, and get this, as a result of Googling them, decided not to go there.
Wowee.
So that is this sort of this Google presence is trumping the lofty, the hallowed personal recommendation, and we're seeing this more and more. Certainly for the millennials, my daughter-in-law said to me, completely off the cuff at a family dinner, she's getting Invisalign at the moment. I think she's spending $8,000 on it, and she's like, "Oh, look, if the practice doesn't have a decent review profile, if the reviews are not recent, if there's not lots of them, and they're sort of positive, I'm not going there." And she had.
Would I be right in saying that the way I would look for a new restaurant to go to, I'm the same. If there's not a lot of reviews, if they're not overwhelmingly positive, if there's not great pictures of the food,
yeah,
I'm not even. It's going to shift to the next person on my list.
Yeah, and the research shows that the minimum number of reviews that your practice needs for people to trust them. Okay, because if you're thinking, "Well, Angus, I'm fine, we've got 5 reviews," I can tell you that's not enough. The most recent data I've seen suggested you need at least about 50 for people to trust the average number, like 4.7. Because if you've got a low number, they go, "Oh, that's obvious. You got all your friends and family to do that." But once they and interestingly, that minimum number to trust the average rating is going up every year. So there is some skepticism. But what people want to see is plenty of reviews, a good average number, and that they're recent. If your last review is a year old, like, you're in trouble, because people will look at that and go, "Well, I don't know what's been happening there the last year, but I'm not going there." So that's one part of the Google picture, which is the reviews. The other part is about showing up prominently. My buddy at work, Julie's told me I need to go and see this dental practice. I can't find them. Like, I've looked in, suburb name dentist, Richmond dentist, Parramatta dentist, Indooroopilly dentist, and I can't find them. They're not on the first page. They're not on the map. And so they make some assumptions about this. And what this is fundamentally dealing with here is that Joe Public has no objective way of telling whether you're a good dentist or not. I just don't know. I'm not a dentist. I don't know. I mean, I assume you're qualified, but I don't know whether you're a good, bad, or indifferent dentist. And so we look for these proxies, these kind of other measures to say, I think they're a good dentist because they've got lots of positive reviews. I think they're a good dentist because when I go to their website, they really speak to me, and it's not the same jargon, blah, 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 that I get from every other practice. And so Google's not one system. Google's actually, at some levels, it's about 10, but for a dental practice, it's really 4 main systems. You've got the reviews, you've got your Google My Business page, which is where the reviews live, but the amount of information that people can get from your Google My Business page is extraordinary. They don't need to go to your website. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a good website, but from your Google My Business page, I can find out your opening hours, where you are, how many reviews you've got, what are people saying, what are the photos of you, what are the videos of you, are you open now, et cetera, et cetera. So that stuff's really important. Then you've got the Google Map, and in most areas, it's only the top 3 dentists in an area that get on the map. And that, the difference between being in 4th place and 3rd place is massive, because you get onto the map. There was a review by a group called Backlinko, and they looked at data from 5 million Google searches, and they found that from 6th place, basically, if you're on the 2nd page of Google, just forget about it. You might as well not be there. Once you get to the 1st page, that's good, but positions 10 to 7 are about the same. Once you get to position 6, every single place that you move up is about a 30% boost in traffic.
Wow.
And it's massive. You think, I'm on the 1st page of Google. If you're down the bottom, it's blah, blah, blah. You might as well not be there. But from 6 and up, every single move up is about a 30% boost. And I would say the jump from 4 to 3 is really critical, because then you're on the map as well as being in the organic, the top 10 results. But interestingly, if you're in 1st place for a search term, you are typically, this is what the research showed, you're typically getting about 10 times the traffic than if you're in 10th place.
Wow,
so,
wait.
Yeah, so it's like each individual spot moving up. Anyway, as I said, there's 4 systems. There's the reviews, there's the Google My Business page, which if you haven't claimed it, go and claim it.
And you find many practices haven't claimed their Google My Business page?
Most have. Occasionally they haven't. And there was a case in Brisbane last year, I'm not going to name the parties, where a competitor claimed someone else's page and then marked it as being shut down. Now, you think about that. I mean, even for me, for my dentist, I go, okay, well, I haven't been for a while. I should give them a call. Well, I'll just Google them to get the phone number, and then it says they're shut down. That is disastrous. So, yeah. And then I suppose, the 5th system is the ads, the Google ads themselves. But that, I believe these days, Julie, that Google it's probably a diploma level qualification to really nail it. It's moved out of, this is something I can just have a crack at myself. Unless you're the only dentist in town. So I suppose, returning to your comment at the start of this podcast, getting professional help. I know from Julie and me, it sounds like that's a strong statement of self-interest, but I don't see thriving practices who are doing it by themselves. And with all the reading that I do in the business space, it's the same deal. I just keep hearing that you need a team of, sort of experts in a whole bunch of areas to help you really optimize your business.
Yeah, and you're talking earlier about, opining the days of being able to put a shingle out in the front and welcome mat, and all of a sudden you're going to be a busy dentist. There's benefits and drawbacks to everything, as you know.
Yeah.
And, one of the benefits that we have right now is that we have got such broad reach in our marketing and promotional ideas that we can put out there. We can really tackle a large number of people that we could never have decades ago. But I think that's one of the concepts, and it's been very interesting for me to hear this, that a practice that is built on existing patient referrals is one of the most magnificent ways to build your practice. You keep hearing about this because it doesn't cost anything. It means that you're always trying to provide a better and better service. However, consumer behavior online says that you absolutely need to do everything that you've done so far to get those existing patient referrals, but you need to do a step more, see those referrals through to fruition where they actually call your practice. You've got to make sure that new patient referral, their journey after that you're providing them with reasons not to come to your practice rather than reasons to absolutely, yes, your friend was right, you have to come here.
Yeah, it's look, I understand why not everybody's on top of this, because this isn't the way it was. But unfortunately, or fortunately, things are changing. And I suppose for people who embrace this, they will reap the rewards. I mean, Julie, you're not the new kid on the block. You've worked with a lot of practices as well. Would you agree with me? I mean, I just think about every practice I've seen that's thriving. And these are not small-minded people. These are not people who've said, oh, no, we're just going to do it ourselves. I'm just going to spend my time on the weekend learning how to do, Google ads or whatever it is. Like, I just don't see that. The practices I see that are going really well and the kind of practices that I would want to go to as a patient, they've said, we recognise we're going to play to our strengths, which is to provide brilliant dentistry, but we're going to get help for these other areas.
And I completely agree with you. Again, back in the day, the consumer expectations, the staff expectations, the business expectations were different. What made a business viable back then, quite different to the hurdles you have to move through to make sure your business is viable today. And there is that common complaint. We didn't learn about any of this going through dental school, but Edward Ferran on his podcast, and he's a big proponent, he's an American dentist. If anyone doesn't know who he is, go on to Dentistry Uncensored. And he's very outspoken that your dental degree is a starting point, a point to leap off from. Everything else, depending on where your career takes you, you need to start learning all of those different areas as well. You can't be an expert in everything when you're a dental practice owner because there is simply not enough time. You are in the surgery doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so how wonderful is it that there are so many other experts in the field that are waiting there with all of their wisdom and years of experience to be able to say, this is the way forward, and I can help educate you on that pathway as well.
Yeah, I love talking to practices and trying to understand when they are. And I think one of the benefits that they get is because, I can't speak for everyone, but because of all the consulting I've done, in a minute or two, I can look at what they offer. I can look at their data and say what's normal and what's not. And so, for example, I'll just look at the data straight away. I'm sorry to be this blunt, but this is what I'm like. I look at that top, 30 people and I say, so I noticed that the most that anybody spent with you in the last 12 months is $2,500. Are you kind of bashful about offering the higher end dental services at this practice? Because I don't understand it, because I see data from dozens and dozens of practices. And I'm wondering, are you somehow hesitant about offering those higher end services as though that's somehow unethical, or that you're, wanting to push people? And I'm sorry, but the data, it paints a picture, you just get to sort of see those numbers very quickly and go, oh, that's not normal, or then, on the flip side, there'll be practices I look at and say, wow, it's fantastic. It's obvious that you guys are doing a great job here because I see it. And again, this is not about sort of being money hungry, but spending money with you is a proxy for trust and for value. And if I spend a lot of money with you, it means I value you and that I trust you. And if I don't see those numbers, then I'd say, well, unfortunately, you're not delivering that to your people. And I guess if I were a dentist, I just would love to have a day where I look in the books on a Sunday night, for Monday morning, and I go, oh my goodness, it's Mrs. Jones coming in at 9:00 and she loves us. And, when we make an ethical recommendation for treatment to her, she does it. And guess what? Mr. Smith's in at 10:00 and he loves us. And when we make an ethical recommendation, he does it. I mean, imagine a day of dentistry like that. Instead of which dealing with, kind of 20 or 30 people for what David Moffat calls a grudge buy. And that, so, I see this from a business point of view, but I also think from a personal happiness and satisfaction, like play to your strengths, delegate your weaknesses.
I agree. And I know that when I've gone through, I had my own practice for 10 years and there were so many things that do come up. You go, oh my God, it's so hard because now there's this as well and there's this as well and that staff member's unhappy for some reason and this one's not turning up and these patients are difficult to deal with. All this stuff keeps happening. And Charles has a wonderful saying, your reward for solving problems is not peace of mind, is not happiness, it is bigger problems. As we progress through our careers and become practice owners and all the rest of it, your problems will only expand and get bigger, but embrace it because it means you're getting better. It means you are progressing forward. And for myself in the past, it's been the moment that I've embraced the issues, the problems, the barriers, and said, fantastic, how can we get a solution around this? That's where I started to grow in leaps and bounds, when I just stopped putting up the resistance to it. And we resist the stuff that we don't understand. And so if you are a dental practice out there looking at your website or your online presence and you think, I just don't understand it, I probably should be spending time on it, but I can't face it at the moment, then just call an expert in. It makes the whole process very quick. You've got the person in the right position to be able to help and advise what you do, but then you've embraced it and you can start moving forward quickly.
Yeah, well, I suppose my question to the listeners is, especially if you're in business, I mean, are you doing your own tax? Like, and for me, I'm like, why would you? I mean, the tax space is changing so much that you'd just be mad. Because if you're doing your own tax, I'm saying, like, what value do you place on your own time? I mean, my philosophy as a 52-year-old male is that life is basically a journey of figuring out what you're great at and spending as much time as possible in that area because it's personally fulfilling. And secondly, it's way more profitable. Like you're saying, if you're solving problems, I mean, Elon Musk's got some quote about you get paid in relation to the size of problem that you solve.
Nice.
Well, if you're a person that's, placing implants or doing ortho or whatever the case may be, is you're solving $1,000 an hour problems. Why on earth would you be spending time on $20 an hour activities? It just doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I mean, that's the way I look at this. I know some of you will listen to this and say, well, of course you two would say that because you're in that space. But I just say, like, forget about us. Go and look at the businesses that are going really well and see whether the people in charge of those businesses are spending time doing $20 an hour activities. And I guarantee you they're not.
Mm. And there are so many applications now that help dental practices, businesses. I know with my business, the number of applications I pay a monthly membership to because I need that level of expertise to be elegant in how I roll out my business. Dental practices are falling into that same category as well. There's a whole bunch of very helpful stuff that makes you and your practice be more efficient, more productive, and more stress-free.
Yeah.
Start investigating into it. And as I say, don't resist the space. The practices that I see get the most out of dental coaching as a dental coach are the ones that, rather than looking at the information that I provide, telling me why it wouldn't work in their practice, asking me the question, oh, that's an interesting piece of information. How do other practices make sure it works in their situation? So having that growth mindset, that mindset of getting over that hurdle of, but it won't work with my practice. It won't work with my team. It won't work with my patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Julie, we spoke before the podcast about something that I've involved with a number of other people around the place called the Ultimate Practice Makeover, ultimatepracticemakeover.com.au, which is an unbelievable $90,000 makeover in a 6-month period. And that is, there's a $40,000, this is free for the winner. $40,000 fit out, new website, new branding, bunch of coaching. It's a big list of what's included. And the truth is that as people are applying for that, and if you're listening to this, it closes on the 31st of July, 2021. So ultimatepracticemakeover.com.au. All you've got to do to enter is either you make a 2-minute video or 250 words or less, and you just tell us a bit about yourself. There's some details on the site. But the truth is, one of the things that we're looking at for the person who's going to win that is someone who's got the mindset that you described, because as the saying goes, you can't polish a turd. I mean, I'm not calling anyone a turd, but if people have got a growth mindset and they're ready to work, then we want to produce what we believe will be the biggest and fastest transformation of all time in the Australian dental field. That's basically our goal. And by the way, we're turning it into a little digital TV show as well. But that's
exciting. That is absolutely incredible. I've seen advertising around the Ultimate Practice Makeover, and hearing about who's involved, what's involved. The value is extraordinary. This will absolutely transform a dental practice from one that may take years and years to achieve the rolling turnover of a successful practice, and actually speed track that and happen straight away.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of reality TV comes to the dental industry, and it's, I mean, of course, I hope it'll be compelling viewing, but we also hope that for the people watching it, they can see this transformation. The truth is that as humans, we love transformation stories. If you look at most of the most successful movies of all time, there's some element of personal transformation. You know, Star Wars, where Luke is, you know, a bit unsure of himself, and then he uses the Force, and suddenly he vanquishes evil. And so it's not quite as dramatic as that, but nevertheless, that transformation, we're looking for the right practice where they've got that sort of their mindset. Of course, they want the makeover, and that's fine. We've got a very generous group of sponsors involved, but I just can't wait to see it. Like, it's kind of that sort of crap to gold story, you know, in the shortest possible time, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, how tremendous. And Australians certainly love the underdog story, that's for sure.
Yes. No, I wouldn't want anyone to think that, that what they've got is somehow too bad, or, that it's not, that's not it. I mean, basically, if you've got a willingness to learn and you're sort of teachable, that's really that, and a pulse and a dental practice. That's about, in Australia, that's about the only real requirements. I mean, there's a panel that will decide who the winner is, but to be a fun ride, literally $90,000 of value. I mean, I don't know who. I just can't think of an example where someone says, "Here, let me invest $90,000 into your business, and you don't have to do anything except just come along for the ride." So,
and the return on investment is just ongoing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's not as though they get this over 6 months and then we switch the tap off. I mean, if things are set in place, and it's just inevitable, they're going to get an incredible return from it.
So, are you looking at a certain type of dental practice to apply, or can anybody apply?
No, as long as you're in Australia, it does need to be independent. It wouldn't really make sense to do it with a corporate. No, I mean, basically the more the merrier. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're even slightly interested, you'd be mad not to.
It's been on offer before.
No, it's never been done before. And as I say, I don't have the full list in front of me, but it is a $40,000 fit out, a brand new website, new branding, new uniforms, SEO for 12 months, coaching in, phone skills and practice management. I'm sorry, apologies to those other people involved that I've forgotten. There's a whole range of stuff. There's the fit out, and then there's a whole bunch of coaching. Again, apologies to those other sponsors that I've forgotten about.
There is a whole raft of different things that you can benefit from if you did apply. And all the details of how to apply and more information about what's included in the prize is at ultimatepracticemakeover.com.au, and everyone's got up until the last day of this month, the 31st of July, to submit their application.
Yeah, and we tried to make the application process reasonably simple. Look, if you're feeling courageous, get out your smartphone and make a 2-minute video. I mean, that's what I would do. That's the simplest thing to do. It doesn't need to be a Hollywood production. It's you and your smartphone. Take us on a tour. Just talk to the camera. It can be rough and ready. Alternatively, if you hate that idea, then it's 250 words. As Julie and I were discussing, we're pretty sure every dentist had to do a whole bunch of, words for essays and so on at university. Hopefully it'll feel like it's more fun than an essay. You just talk about yourself, and then the judging panel will have a look at the entries, and, we'll pick the best one, and, it's going to be fun.
You got nothing to lose by applying, and everything to gain, that's for sure. Could be a real turn to your practice.
Absolutely.
And so to wind up, Angus, if what would be your advice to people out there that have got a dental practice website that they haven't looked at and assessed whether it's effective or not for a period of years? What would their next natural step be?
Well, I know we spoke about websites a fair bit, but really a website sits under that broader issue of figuring out who your ideal client is. I put together a resource which is the 10 hottest marketing winners for dentists in 2021. So if you go to www.anguspryor.com/hot, not because I think I'm hot, Julie, but because it's hottest winners.
Page name.
Yeah. So anguspryor.com/hot. Then you can get that resource, and that will take you through. So, we're sort of halfway through 2021. This is something we keep our finger on the pulse. That's the 10 hottest marketing winners. I think that's a good place to start. And, if people want to get in touch, then they can do that on the same website.
Fantastic. And all of the links that we've spoken about in the show notes. And so if you're intrigued, please go to the show notes and click wherever your interest lies. Thank you so much, Angus. You've provided such an enormous amount of information for people, and I do hope you come back on the podcast again in the future, especially when the ultimate practice makeover is in its you've identified the winner and you're going on that journey. I can't wait for the TV version of it to come out, the program version to come out. It's going to be very exciting.
Yes. I'm the same. I can't wait to see the outcome. I can't wait to see the makeover. I will confess to being a teeny bit apprehensive about what it is that we've got to do, because we're doing the video production on this as well. But we've got a very capable team, it's kind of, The Block does dentistry. It's, Dancing with the Stars does dentistry. It's, Farmer Wants a Wife does dentistry. It's not about you, not getting anyone to form a new romantic relationship or anything, but it'll be a really fun process. And look, Julie, thank you very much for hosting me on the podcast. I think that's great. But secondly, just for your commitment to the industry. I mean, you're not a dentist, and yet you were a practice manager and owner for 10 years, and here you are still sort of inputting into the dentistry for the benefit of all those who are listening. So, much kudos to you for that one.
Oh, I thank you for your comments. Very kind of you, Angus. Good luck with everything. I wish you the world of success. Come back on anytime you've got more interesting, wonderful things to share with dental practices on how to help them be much more successful than they are already.
Thanks, Julie.
Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recording so you can watch them at a time that suits you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. The price is just $199 per month, and it is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.